Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing very good. Rob is running a little late. We're going to give him a couple of minutes. The meeting's supposed to start at 6:15. We're just going to give him a few more minutes for him to get on the call. And we'll start. Alex, thanks for coming.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we definitely get some information on the urban design project.
I'm here to present an urban design idea. I also brought a couple colleagues with me here, Kieran and Fred. You can see down below.
Hello.
Yeah.
And Fred, okay.
But yeah, we have a what we think to be an exciting proposal for the Franklin Avenue shuttle.
Okay.
So I think that fits well into this subcommittee and your guys' topics.
Okay. Seems like Rob is trying to join in.
Good evening. Good evening. Despite my worst fears and everyone's best hopes, I'm not late. How is everyone?
Doing well. How are you?
All right. Let's see. Good evening, Mark. How are you?
Doing very good. Thank you.
Bear with me. Sorry, we have my mother-in-law is a house guest tonight, so the household was a little shaken up as you might imagine. Things are a little out of order, so I'm happy to have this meeting tonight. All mother-in-law jokes aside. I hope she can't hear me. Let me just take a look here. Mr. Thurton, Miss Langley, Mr. Blindman. We still need a few people to roll in before we should start the official meeting. A big committee this year. We've got 24 people.
Entry is not valid or
2-3.
not started yet. Re-enter your access code or meeting number followed by pound.
What is it? 2. I'll just put the phone on mute. I'll put the phone on mute.
Hello?
Good evening.
Hello? Good evening.
Yes, I'm not. The Zoom meeting?
Yes,
Yes.
this is the Community Board 8,
Yes,
the Environment,
thank you.
Sanitation, and Transportation Committee meeting.
Yes, sir.
Great, we're going to get rolling in about 2 or 3 minutes. We just need a few more
No.
bodies to get in the room.
No problem.
Once we
I'll
do,
just
I'll
quiet.
call attendance. And at that point in time, please speak up and let us know who you are. And then we'll go with that.
Thank you.
Let me see.
Dangerous.
In the interests of time, and everyone knows I love a quick meeting, I'm going to call the October meeting of Community Board 8's Environment, Sanitation, and Transportation Committee to order. Good evening, everyone. My name is Robert Witherwax. I am the chair of Community Board 8's Environment, Sanitation, and Transportation Committee. Oops, stop the video for some reason. Our agenda tonight is to, we've got 2 items that we want to hear, and then we're going to move on to sort of open discussions of the committee's ongoing agenda. Our first agenda item is going to be a vote on a, a co-naming application. Our second agenda item, I believe I saw Mr. Cream is here. Alexander Cream. We're going to hear from Mr. Cream with a presentation he wants to bring before the community. And then we're going to move into committee business. But first, before we do any of that, I'm going to call the roll. If you hear your name, please unmute, say here or present or whatever. I'll acknowledge you and move on to the next name. Once we're done with that, I'll go through the WebEx portal and I'll ask for those of you calling in by phone numbers to identify yourselves, and we'll go from that. Before I even do that, I do wish to acknowledge the presence of Councilmember Chi Osei. Thank you for joining us, Councilmember. And you're always welcome to come in person, and I please beg you to always send somebody if you can't be here in person.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I just wanted to stop by to just see how the vote went for the street co-naming.
We should be on that in about, we're done with that in about 10 minutes if all goes well.
Thank you.
I do want to just remind everyone on the call that we are being live streamed. We've been on, I guess, for an hour and 15 minutes already, but we're going to be going for as long as it takes. So please don't say anything or do anything that you wouldn't want rebroadcast, because here we are. This is the 21st century, the internet, live and in person, right? Bear with me. Let me just find the agenda. Sorry, the roster. Here we go. All right, roll call. Desmond Atkins. Julia Boyd. Michael Francoeur.
Evening, everyone. I'm here.
Thank you. Alan Gerber. Karen Gray.
Here.
Thank you, Ms. Gray. Saskia Hagans. Jeannie Harris Blenman.
Present.
Thank you. Colin Jakubczyk.
Here.
Thank you. Jennifer Jordan.
Okay.
Thank you. Zerzima Jordan.
Here.
Thank you. Regina Kinsey. Peter Crashes.
Here.
Thank you. Francis Langley.
Here.
Thank you. William Meehan.
Here.
Thank you. Fior Ortiz Joyner.
Present.
Thank you. Pebbles Russell. Celeste Stern. Barry Tan is excused. Nicole Tetreault. Mark Thurton.
Here, Rob.
Got you, Mark. Ethel Tyus. Irsa Weatherspoon. Robert Witherwax here, and Deborah Young. All right. Out of the 24 members of the committee, we have 12 members either present or excused absence. So we need one more body before we can do business. Or we need to kick somebody off the committee, one way or another, but you can't do that all at once. One more body. So regrettably, can't have a vote quite yet, but I'll keep an eye out for anybody who joins us. Who is calling in? The first three digits are 917 and the last two are 84.
Mrs. Diane Davis. I've been residing in this area since 1957, and I've watched Kevin grow up.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Thank you. Who's calling in from 234? Last two digits are 91. Hang on. 347. Last two digits are 71.
Hi, my name is Phoebe Montas. I am a close friend of Eileen Fernandez.
Thank you, Ms. Monton. 347. Last two digits are 63.
Good evening. My name is Gabriella Di Piazza, and I live in the community.
Okay, thank you, Ms. DiPiazza. 908. Last two digits are 69. Okay. 917. Last two digits are 82.
Jamala Davis. I live in the community.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. That's it for our phone people.
Hello. Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yeah, who's this?
I apologize for the interruption. This is Prince Lyde, Administrative Assistant of the Board of Elections. I'm here on behalf of Kevin House.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Slide. Did I hear that right?
Mr. Lyde, but thank you though.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, while we wait to see if anybody trickles in, I'm going to pull up the information on the Alvis application. It's here in the Dropbox. Actually, no. I'm going to make an audible, and I apologize for all of those who came out here for the Alvis application. I would have liked for it to have been the first item on the agenda, but since we don't have a quorum and we can't vote, I'm going to turn the floor over to Mr. Cream, who has a presentation to bring to this committee. So, Mr. Cream, if you are ready, do you have what you need to begin?
I do. Yeah.
Take the floor. I give you 10 minutes, and hopefully that'll be, you can beg me for more time if that's not enough.
Okay, 10 minutes. All right. Well, first of all, thank you all for having us. I have a couple colleagues here with me, Karen and Fred, which I mentioned previously. I guess if I just take a minute to introduce myself, I live near Fort Greene Park off of Washington Avenue. I wish we were all meeting in person. I think this always feels a little cold and impersonal over, Zoom or WebEx, whatever it might be. But either way, it's an honor to be here and very excited to present to you guys an idea that we've been mulling over. So I guess, I was introducing the idea that I live off Washington Avenue. I frequently go down Washington Avenue to Pacific or Dean and take that to Nostrand, where I end up spending a lot of my time as my girlfriend lives in that neighborhood. So that commute, which I've been doing for over a year now, is how I first got introduced to the Franklin Avenue shuttle corridor. And it's been something that has been fascinating me for the past year. And over the last 6 months, various ideas around the project itself have started to coalesce, and we've begun talking about it in-house internally at our firm to try and develop it further. And we felt that we should not go any further without engaging with you guys and getting community feedback and going, to you guys with it. So I'll share my screen now. We've done a fair amount of research on the project. If you guys could confirm that you are seeing my screen.
I can see it.
Great. So before we get into any further details, what I'll do is just begin by sharing an overall image that introduces the big picture idea. Sorry, my computer is thinking as I share screen. There, I'm going full screen. Okay. Sorry, this is, I have a black screen in front of me right now. Okay, you guys can see it fine?
Yes.
Okay, so if we were to show the big picture idea in an image, I think this captures a lot of it. And what that comes down to is creating a multi-layered transportation corridor with community facilities and a reclamation, if you will, a taking back of vacant, neglected, publicly owned land and turning that back into the community infrastructure. Okay, so what we're considering here is 3 layers of urban fabric, if you will. So in the top layer being a 21st century urban gondola system network. Below that, a pedestrian and/or cyclist corridor on the existing infrastructure that is the S-line currently. And then along with that, at both the areas where it submerges into a gully, as well as the elevated corridor through most of Community Board 8, is turning back that vacant land into community gardens and composting facilities through a mixture of public and private partnerships. Okay, so if I'll step away from the project for a minute and talk a little bit about our firm and our work, just to frame our approach to urbanism. We currently have a project in South Africa. This is the site before we began work. This is publicly owned land that was informally settled as a shanty town. We then reclaimed that land, brought in electricity, solar energy, on-site generation, as well as access to water to this community through a years-long participation in the design process with them. Here you can see in Caracas, Venezuela, abandoned lots that have been greatly underutilized that we multiplied and created vertical gyms as community infrastructure and recreational facilities within some of the most disadvantaged neighborhoods in Caracas. Further than that, in Caracas, when the city was proposing a road system that would displace tens of thousands of residents of the barrios, we introduced the idea of an urban gondola system to preserve those homes and those residents. And we built a network throughout Caracas of urban gondola stations. Okay, so the key elements in this approach is reclaiming underutilized, neglected city land, transforming into community infrastructure, engaging strategically with the existing urban fabric, creating a layered city, increasing mobility and access to resources. And this is our idea of the Parangolé, a modern city that's predicated on layers, mobility, and access. Okay, it's engaging with ideas of stratification and evolution of cities over time that is giving back to public and creating increased public space, as well as increased mobility throughout the city while working with the existing. Okay, so that brings us to the S-line and the Franklin Avenue shuttle corridor. Now, this is a typical street view taken within Community Board 8. If I just go real quickly through the history of the S-Line, first, it's what we found in this history was that the S-Line is a remnant of a 19th century transportation corridor that originally went all the way to Brighton Beach. Since then, all of it has been abandoned and taken down except for the S-Line, except for the Franklin Avenue shuttle. Okay. 68 is the current iteration of the S-Line as we know it today. 1968 is when that was built. Okay. Within a matter of years, the city had already begun putting the line up for abandonment, which I know was a very, very sensitive subject for the community, as it should be. Abandonment is never the right answer. Okay, move on to the 90s when it's called the Ghost Line. 98, finally, it received $75 million, which was the last public investment that the Franklin Avenue Shuttle Corridor has received. At its current state, it's 1.4 miles long. It has 4 stops. I'm sure all of you are very familiar with this. But what you may not be familiar with is that along the corridor, the city owns approximately 20 acres of land. Okay, and then it also exists as the lowest current ridership within the city. Now, the idea behind this proposal is not to abandon that because of it. It's to think creatively about how we may attract the $75 to $100 million that is necessary to maintain the line. So how can we create an alternative use proposal? Well, first of all, we can consider it a park. It already exists as a green corridor extending off of Prospect Park. What we'd like to propose is emphasizing that and embracing that and giving that to the public. Okay, now this is an example of how it exists below Eastern Parkway. All of this, again, can be turned into parkland. Now, this is an empty lot up against the tree line along that area. Again, can be turned into another park, could be turned into community facilities. This is a city-owned lot, massive city-owned lot that touches directly adjacent to the S-Line. You can see the tree corridor there along the back. Again, it could be a park. It could be many things that it currently right now is not used. Okay, so these are different ways in which we could consider introducing public parks, 10 acres of a linear park, 5 acres of urban parks that exist within the grid. Okay, beyond that, community facilities. Right now, this is the Prospect Park Station. It's a huge hole in the urban fabric, and this station can be so much more. Okay, we can use this, again, sorry, this is straying outside Community Board 8, but I do want to introduce just the overall project before we focus on particulars to Community Board 8. Now, the Fulton Franklin corner stop, again, an incredible location for civic use that currently is totally underutilized. And as you can see, and I know that this is a topic within, and as it absolutely should be, the hyperdevelopment on the left of luxury condominiums. That is the only development that we're seeing along Fulton Avenue and Atlantic Avenue. And ideally, through a project like this, we can start to introduce civic buildings that are not about luxury housing, that are about community facilities. Okay? So again, a major footprint, a major opportunity for civic development. Atlantic Boulevard, this is now within Community Board 8 footprint. The corner of Atlantic Boulevard next to the men's facility, a massive vacant city parking lot currently. That could be a community facility. Again, the Park Place station is all of this can be subject to adaptive reuse into multifunctional spaces that can be civic facing. Okay, and that's what we're here to discuss. We'd like to discuss maybe at another time how we can introduce these kinds of programs to a proposal around this. Potential programs that we've thought of based off of your community needs are senior centers, youth centers, recreational facilities, health clinics, computer labs, educational centers, spaces for workshops, affordable housing, on and on. There's plenty of space within this corridor to introduce these kinds of projects. Beyond that, this is where it gets very interesting in my mind, specifically to the land within Community Board 8, is community gardens and composting. So this is, you can see it on almost every single block along the S-Line corridor is really beautiful lots that currently are just overgrown and fenced off. Okay, and this is an example right here. This is Pacific. Sorry,
Hello.
this is Dean. This is Dean Street, and it's an incredible space that can be activated for community activities, gardening, whatever it be. We've identified at least 10 sites just within Community Board 8's footprint that are all ready to be occupied. And we actually see this as an opportunity for us to potentially take early steps in reclaiming this land along this corridor that currently is going without use. Okay, then stormwater infrastructure. We can introduce stormwater management, the entire 1.5 mile stretch of this corridor along all 20 acres. And responsibly address the climate change and increased flooding that we're having in the area. And then lastly, ending with increased north-south mobility through the gondola system that we already mentioned, as well as a pedestrian and/or cyclist corridor. And these are just some precedents. The one on the left is our project, and here in the center in Caracas in Venezuela. And it's happening around the world, and it's slowly coming to the United States. And it will be coming to New York to have elevated transportations as our subway systems are failing with, increased humidity and flooding on our outdated infrastructure. Now, cost analysis, we believe that it will actually be cheaper to introduce a gondola system than maintain the Franklin Avenue shuttle corridor as its current heavy rail line. These are precedents of linear parkways that have happened. They're happening with increasing frequency in the Northeast. And just a matter of weeks ago, Queens was just approved for its own on the Queensway, which some of you may be familiar with. Now, we see this as a great potential to engage with many public organizations that can help solidify all aspects of this project. And that's all I have to present on it today. And we'd love to get feedback. And again, we're not looking for anything formal. What we're looking for is feedback and the potential to explore this committee's support of our continued research and potentially writing for grants and trying to continue on developing ideas for this massive untapped, what we see as a untapped potential within this footprint.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for a very compelling and out-of-the-box presentation. We generally have not been in the position of advocating for less transit service, but you make a compelling argument that there's something to be said for looking at our built infrastructure through a different set of eyes.
Well, we're actually advocating for increased transportation.
True. I meant transit.
We would not consider this project. Yeah. We would not consider this project without considering how to increase ridership and mobility along the Franklin Avenue corridor. Now, what's concerning about how the city approaches this rail line is that their first inclination is abandonment. And that's all they've proposed in the 60 some odd years that the Franklin Avenue shuttle corridor has existed in its current state. So we see this as, a compelling opportunity to create what we call an alternative use proposal to attract civic investment, public investment into a piece of infrastructure that otherwise they will continue to neglect.
So let me just be very clear. I understood the proposal, right? You are calling for the elimination of the train service between Franklin Avenue and Prospect Park, right?
Yes, with
and a replacement with other means of transit. That's
namely an urban gondola. Correct.
Okay. All right. Let me just talk a little bit before I see we have a couple questions. I want to give us another 5 minutes, then move on to the next one. But are you willing to come back?
Absolutely.
Another time.
Absolutely.
Great. Have you been to Community Board 9 yet?
I have not.
Yeah. Have you been to Community Board 3 yet?
No, we approached Community Board 8 first, as it represents the largest population, the largest residential sector of the Franklin Avenue corridor. So this is actually our first public-facing presentation, if you will, other than our internal conversations about it.
Well, like I said, a very, very thought-provoking idea. I see there's two questions. I see Mr. Atkins and Ms. Tyus, and then we'll move on to the co-naming. But I thank you, gentlemen, for your time. And if you can stick around, once we're done with the business and the co-naming, and there are more questions, if you want to hang out, we may have occasion to return to you. Mr. Atkins, please.
Good evening and hello to everyone. Mr. Crean, your project is very stimulating. And because you pointed out the fact that you've been working with this in two severely diminished communities, South Africa and Caracas, Venezuela. I saw what you did in South Africa, but one of the things that I wanted to ask was you took a shanty town. What happened to the people who were originally inhabiting? That's just one question. And were they able to come back and inhabit in the revitalized area? That's just one question. The second thing is I'm really happy that you're the first person who I believe has come and approached Community Board 8 first, rather than going to the end conditions of Community Boards 3 and 9, and then telling us, this is what we got, and you're going to lump it. So that was a very, very different way, at least in my mind, in my time, of seeing someone propose an idea. The third thing is that you're talking about creating urban parklands and extending things on already owned city land. But this community in central Brooklyn, a lot of them have a hidden history of being red fields, of having severely damaged soil from industrial use going back 200 years. And there's all kinds of heavy metals and other things that are in the soil and are now viewed to be severely
I don't want to hear
destructive.
that.
Beg pardon? Okay, and being very destructive. So I don't know if you have taken that into account, because the city bureaucracy is really a pain when it comes to, if you bring a project, that they lump all of the heavy duty stuff, all the heavy lifting on the person coming in, and they take no responsibility for the previous degradation. The gondola is not scary to people who ski, but I've got to think that there are a lot of people who are going to have trepidation about changing their means of traversing that space in a gondola. And one of the reasons that line got to be so tremendously underused was because I'm correct me someone if I'm wrong, was that there appeared to have been a high incidence of crime because it was not properly used.
Yes.
And it
Yes.
and it would take a tremendous amount of changing of the mindset and people to use the gondola system and to say, I feel secure in getting in an enclosed case, particularly just coming off a worldwide pandemic with someone and basically bouncing along in the sky for a mile and a half, mile and a quarter. So those are just some small observations. And I probably had some others that skipped out of my mind as I was listening to you. But this is quite interesting. I'm just curious how in two places, South Africa with the retrograde government and Caracas with a failed nation, how you were able to do this. I don't know what I'm saying is
I'm on a
funny.
meeting.
Oh,
Okay.
that was an excellent analogy. I thought you were going to suggest that New York City might be a failed government as well, but you didn't quite go there, Mr. Atkins. Thank you.
No, New York is not a failed government. New York is a short-sighted government in the hands of oligarchs who do what they want to do and screw the people. That's what New York City is. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Tyus, then I apologize. I didn't see the hands, but I do now. Ms. Tyus, Mr. Crassus, and Mr. Meehan, and then we move on to the co-naming.
Am I able to respond to the questions, or are we just?
If you could keep this to a listening session for the
Okay.
most part today, and then perhaps after our co-naming agenda, we can get back to some answers.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Mr. Witherwax. This is Ethel Tyus responding. I appreciate you allowing me to come in late to the meeting. I'm on my phone, which I've never done this before. And I want to say to Mr. Cream, thank you for looking like a lighthouse with a 360-degree head swivel to figure out what can be done with what we have. So I would ask that without really looking at and hearing your presentation on the gondola concept, that you not kick the existing infrastructure to the curb without seeing how much value it can bring to the transportation capabilities of the residents. And I wanted to join this discussion mainly because I've had personal contact with the prior head of MTA to see that parking lot use through the city's Department of Planning to the city for definitely and singly low-income housing. So however else the transportation part of this goes, that parking lot is ripe for very low income housing. It belongs to the state, the city, whatever MTA calls itself, depending on the time of day. And that is why I wanted to join the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tyus. Mr. Crassus.
1 second. Sorry about that. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I want to actually build on maybe on both comments a little bit. I just thought the concept, the approach was really exciting to see. I think the notion of the layers of uses in a place where we're anticipating change is a good thing. And I think that there is actually as you know, there is a cable car in New York, and it's Roosevelt Island's cable car. So there is a history in New York of using this, and there is something kind of it seems apt to connect to Prospect Park with something like this. And I just and adding a bicycle lane there also makes sense, especially because we spend a lot of time in this committee talking about that kind of doubling of travel lanes with cars and bikes. It might be great to take the bikes and put them somewhere else and release the pressure just a touch. But I wanted just to, and I don't know if you know the context, I thought it was really important what Ethel said about the development potential too, is that there's right now a proposal to, and I'm not sure if you're familiar, so I was just going to, and I know that the council member Osei is here, so he may be able to address this actually directly, but there is underway and will be a whole set of public meetings and a process for redoing Atlantic Avenue and looking at rezoning of parts of Community Board 8 and Community Board 3 near Atlantic Avenue and in the M1 zones, which this passes right by. So I think that this kind of approach, like looking at these kind of transportation proposals as a big picture in that context, bringing these kind of innovative discussions in would be really exciting. The risk, and I think a bunch of us coming at this from a land use perspective get too, is that you're also introducing opportunity for luxury development. I mean, if you look at the High Line and other things, you see that completely altered Chelsea into a different place. So I guess that's kind of like on the one hand, a input which says this is very exciting, and at the same time, it's and saying that there's a process that this could be absorbed into and could hopefully animate the kind of ideas that hopefully the community will be seeing as we're moving forward. That being said, we also have to look at this across the spectrum of displacement and indirect displacement and hold the city to account that in fact what's happening here isn't just another leverage route into more expensive homes for people nearby.
Thank you, Mr. Crassus.
That's my input.
Mr. Meehan?
Hi, yeah. So I just wanted to say, I do think that some of the aspects of this plan around taking city-owned and state-owned land and turning it into community space and housing is good. But I come from a transit advocacy standpoint, and you're proposing some really backwards, worse for riders transit experiences here. And I think this is coming from a few misplaced assumptions. The first is that the geography here just doesn't make sense for an urban gondola. Gondolas make sense in very constrained geographies, hence Roosevelt Island Tramway, huge river in the middle, and at the time, no subway access. You know, Caracas, for instance, like it works in these mountainous cities where you have to traverse these high elevations, and you know, subway trains can only really do a 4% grade. So the gondola makes sense in that context. Here, you're proposing a solution that would be a significantly slower ride. You cannot make a 7-minute trip from Prospect Park Station to Franklin and Fulton in 7 minutes on a gondola. You simply can't, it's not possible. And if ridership were to grow, the gondola really is low capacity. It has a pretty low cap, whereas the subway, we're only running 2-car trains right now. We could easily, you know, run 4-car trains or even, you know, more than that. Like, it's not that expensive, all things considered, to extend a platform. And second of all, the issue is you seem to be under the misunderstanding that either the city or the MTA has any plans to abandon this anytime soon. That's about 25 years out of date. Like, they did a full gut rebuild of this. It's still in excellent condition compared to what it was back in the 90s, for sure. And it's got at least another good 25 years on it. You know, there's really no justification to give people a worse transfer experience, you know, like poorly timed. It's just not workable as a transit solution, certainly not in this location. I can understand maybe wanting a gondola, I don't know, in Upper Manhattan or the Bronx, where you've got these steep elevation changes, like say from the top of Marble Hill down to Metro North Station on the river. It just doesn't make sense here. But I do think that you should kind of recenter your focus on the re-envisioning of this, you know, state and city-owned public land, where, you know, the train doesn't physically take up space. I think that's a really good side of the proposal that you should try to keep.
Thank you, Mr. Meehan. I'll just add 1 or 2 quick thoughts based on what people have said so far. I'd love to see what you guys would come up with if you turned your vision 190 degrees to the east and looked at the Atlantic Avenue viaduct. I'd like to see what you guys could come up with that space that's underneath. And I know, as Mr. Crassus alluded, and as Councilmember Osei knows, we're going to be spending a lot of energy, hopefully in the next year, talking a lot about Atlantic Avenue, but that's an idea that's been kicking around this committee forever. What can we do under that space that's better than what we do now, that serves the community better? You know, with trains going over every 20 minutes or so, there's a lot of opportunity there. And kind of, again, piggybacking on Mr. Crassus and Mr. Meehan, I mean, it's public space. We've heard since at least the Bloomberg years, the concept of public development over public rights of way. I'd love to see a less, I don't want to characterize your proposal as being transit negative, but to Mr. Meehan's point, I'd love to see what you could do with that space with the mandate to keep the train. Right, I'd love to see your vision for that, and just, you know, with that constraint tied around you, what would you come up with for that space, building around, using the sidelines and the public lands that you've put your finger on an asset that's locked away, and we'd love to find a way to unlock it for the community. Anyway, thank you, and please do stick around, and hopefully my committee will have questions for you either later on this evening or at another moment. But I do want to turn the agenda. Again, thank you, Mr. Cream. Thank you, Mr. Levrat, and thank you, the other gentleman whose name is not in his title, but thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you all for the feedback. Yeah.
So I'd like to welcome Eileen Fernandez, who is the main proponent of the application for co-naming New York Avenue and oh my goodness, New York and
it's okay.
Thank you for Kevin Alves. And we heard the application at our meeting last month rather, and we have asked Ms. Fernandez to go out and notice the block, and she did indeed do so. And those of you who are members of the committee and have access to the Dropbox, you will see pictures of the postings of this meeting that she liberally posted around the corner of Prospect in New York. And I would like to ask anyone who wants to say anything on this application to raise your hand, and I promise to notice the hands this time. And I'll hear what you have to say. If you are calling in on a phone and can't raise your hand, please unmute and request to speak.
I would like to request to speak. My name is Mrs. Diane Davis. I've lived on the block since 1978, where I own and operate a licensed New York City daycare center. Kevin worked with me. Kevin became family, and it would be an honor to him and the community to have the block renamed. I've dealt with a lot of children over the years through different various organizations, Office of Children and Family Services, Bridge Street, Henry Street, Restoration, you name it, I've been in touch with them. And he's one of the good guys. And I've known a lot of the bad guys. He really was an angel on earth. And I would thank you and appreciate it if you take it into your consideration.
Thank
That's all
you.
I have to say.
No, thank you very much, Ms. Davis. Thank you very much for speaking. There is a comment in the chat, and it's a valid one, that I should go over the particulars of the application for those who are new to this meeting and didn't hear it last meeting. What I'm going to do is, I think I can do this, is share the screen so that people can read on the screen. Give me a moment. They're visible. Kevin D. Alves, the father, fiance, son, brother, confidant, community organizer, and microphilanthropist. Born in Guyana at the age of 3, relocated to the U.S. and settled in Brooklyn at 170 New York. Went to schools locally, worked locally, Lincoln Hospital in the Bronx, Parks Department, Cornucopia Logistics, and as we just heard, with the Children's Community Services. And without going into the details, Kevin was tragically, his life was cut short by gun violence earlier this year. And the community has stepped forward to request this, led by his fiancée, Ms. Fernandez, and people like Ms. Davis, who you just heard from, people who knew Kevin from all walks of life. And again, if I'm mischaracterizing, please stop me, but who felt moved by this loss and felt that it was worthy of commemoration. And so they brought it before Community Board 8, and as part of our mandate, we consider the applications. We ask that any applicant come forth with petitions. They did. We ask that applicants come forth with letters of support from people who knew the honoree. They certainly did. We had at least 10 of those letters. And they ask that people come forward with proof that they've notified the neighbors on the proposed intersection. And again, they did. There was some there was some question about timing because his death is so fresh. Many community boards have a rule of thumb where they don't consider applications for a year, 2 years, 3 years. This board does not have that rule of thumb. When we revised our guidelines about 5 or 6 years ago, we considered adding one. We didn't. So we have that. The other one was that there was an ongoing police investigation into the crime. There was a concern about that. We've reached out to the 77th precinct. They have communicated to us that as far as they are concerned, while the investigation remains ongoing, I just had the email up. Bear with me. I want to quote them. According to the 77th Precinct Detective Squad and Field Intelligence Unit, Mr. Alves was not a known gang member, and on the date of his demise, the victim was an innocent bystander. So they have no qualms whatsoever about moving forward with this application. That being the case, I'll ask, is there anyone else who'd like to speak?
Yes. Thank you for opening the floor. Thank you for the community board for giving us the opportunity. This is Prince Lott. I'm an administrative assistant of Board of Elections. I would just like to add on to what Ms. Davis said as well, because I was also one of the young men who used to work at Ms. Davis daycare.
Don't make me cry.
Growing up, Kevin Iles was more so the epitome of what you want any man to be. He was a dedicated father, a community activist, and he also was a friend of someone who was tragically murdered by the same way 20 years ago. And I'm his brother, and we also went through the motions of trying to get a block code name in as well. And thank you for also considering the application not to be 1 or 2 years, because we went through that 20 years ago. So we do see and appreciate and honor that y'all did consider the application with the death being so fresh. But I would like to add that when things like this happen, of tragedy, the first thing everyone says is very cliche to say that this person is a very good person. So that's the first thing everyone is going to say. But I think if anyone put dedication on checking Kevin Iles' background and his work that he put in the community, we also was volunteers of AmeriCorps. We worked to CC Beacon. We volunteered in the past. So many things that we did to stay astray away from violence, and to know that Kevin Iles was a victim of violence is the irony of the things that happen in our neighborhood. But what I would like to say is it would definitely be an honor, and we would just come in humbly to the committee, like with no demands, just humbly asking to honor Kevin, because also he just had a baby girl that he was 2 weeks shy of meeting due to the tragic death as well. And he would never be able to kiss his baby girl. He would never be able to talk to her. He would never be able to show her the things that any father, any dedicated father should and would. And it takes a lot for us to even talk about this, period. Like, these are things that we don't even want to mention. These are horrible things that act in our community, but we can't stand by and not let something happen. So we just want to try to make some change in honoring the people who do. I'm not saying that this is supposed to happen for everyone, but we do want to show some honor in people who are good people and their life's been taken away and they're not forgotten and their name is not in vain. So I would like to thank you for the time. I know I'm taking up a lot of time, but this is a very touchy subject for me, especially knowing Kevin, 36 years of my life, going to school for at least 12 years of my life. I knew Kevin to be the man that anybody want a man to be. And what the 77 precinct said was definitely accurate, because he has no involvement with any gang whatsoever or any violence. I don't even know if he have a criminal background at all. I don't know I don't even know if Kevin's ever been arrested. But maybe I'm getting off topic. I would like to thank you for your time. I would like to thank the committee for even considering the application, and we are honored and we respect any way that it will go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lyde. And as someone who remembers the discussions surrounding Benny when I was first on the board, I'm sorry you've had to go through this twice. Councilmember Osei, and then Pete James, please.
Thank you, Mr. Witherwax, and good evening again, Community Board 8. Yeah, I mean, I know that Miss Fernandez approached this as anyone is supposed to approach this in terms of going about a street renaming. And I know that, everything that she did was done in the right fashion in terms of collecting signatures and getting the word out and support from her neighbors in terms of advocating for this street co-naming. I live a couple blocks away. I know that there was a couple hesitations about the fact that this was a act of violence and whether Mr. Elvis was involved in criminal activity. But as the 77th emailed to the board and have told our office he was not involved in any type of crime or anything of that sort. So my office has spoken to Ms. Fernandez, and we've talked to the community board as well. And we are open to supporting the street co-naming and introducing it for the next deadline this coming November.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
We
And
appreciate
council
it.
member, sorry, just a quick question for the council member. So the procedure, if I'm correct, is that we'll vote tonight, we'll vote at the full board meeting in early November, and then your office takes it to the council, correct?
Yep, correct. We would introduce it in a bill format, and then it would hopefully pass in the council. I don't see a reason why it would not, but hopefully it gets voted through the board, especially with some of the testimonies that we're hearing tonight, as well as the signatures and the email from the 77th precinct.
So again, this committee will vote tonight. If it passes, it will go to the full board at our next meeting in November, and then regardless of what we vote, Councilmember Osei is bringing it to the floor of the council. Hopefully, he does that with a community board support, but he's within his rights and powers to do so without community board support, as anyone is. We are advisory, so let no one think this is the end all and be all of this.
But of course, through calls and interacting with folks on the board, I do presume that this is going to pass through the board. Hopefully.
And yes, we do have a quorum at this point, so we can actually vote. P. James.
Hello, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Good evening. My name is Paulette James. I am a school counselor at New Bridges Elementary, and I've known Eileen, Ms. Fernandez, for 10 years. And as a result of knowing her, I've known Kevin as well. I also have the honor and the joy every day of working with Kevin's second youngest child every day because he attends my school. And to know him is to know his father. Every day, I should say every Monday, we have something that's called morning meeting. And Carter comes in and he had nothing but wonderful things to say about what his father and his brother and him did over the weekend. I mean, he would just sit there like just bursting, waiting for his turn. He could barely listen to everybody else. As a school counselor, we teach children to do the right thing, to show integrity, to, do the right thing when no one's looking, to support your neighbor, to be honest. And Kevin was all of those things. He was an average man who did extraordinary things. He didn't run into burning buildings. He did not stop bullets. What he did was he supported the average person. So if you needed something, he was there. If you needed a kind word, if you needed a laugh, if I needed puzzles and Legos for the students that I work with, because I mentioned to Eileen that they responded, more positively, and they would develop better skills with certain materials that were just like really expensive. Kevin went and bought it and just gave it to Eileen, and Eileen bought it and gave it to me. So he would do the things that were meaningful for everyone. And, to just emphasize that a little bit more, Eileen is the person that I knew. So he had no invested interest in like bringing those things to me. He just knew that there was a need and he saw a way for him to help and participate. And that's what he did. The honoring of his memory, he was not somebody who ever looked to for glory. If you even look at some pictures of him, he turns his face away. He didn't want accolades. So this street co-naming is for his children. You know, the ones that know him and the ones that do not will never know him. This co-naming is for the, you know, for his family, for the people who are left with his memory. And so I thank you for your consideration. You know, Eileen has worked very hard, tirelessly to, and she's even learned different things about Kevin that she has not known over the many years that they've been together. And she's known him since they were children. Just from talking to people in the community and, you know, reaching out to them. She's learned all these different things, that Kevin used to move the cars of older people in the neighborhood, you know, because they were a little arthritic and they couldn't move cars. You know, he's just, you know, the small things that make an impact on your day and leave, you know, an imprint on your heart. That's what he did. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. James. One last comment from Mr. Lawton, Jamil Lawton.
Hi, Mayor.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jamel Lawton. I personally knew Kevin, and I'm extremely devastated by the loss of him. You know, I grew up not having a father in my life, and he really stepped in. You know, he was a positive role model in my life. You know, I was making poor decisions, and he stepped in. You know, and he took me under his wing. You know, he had a mentorship with me, and like the one thing that really sticks with me is the fact that he told me I'm a world changer. You know. So it would be extremely grateful if you name the street after him. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. And I want to thank everyone who's come out tonight, whether you spoke or not, but who's come out tonight to either hear or support or just learn about the proposal. It's refreshing to see that this committee's work has some outreach and some impact and some involvement in people's daily lives. And you're always welcome to come back no matter what the topic. I would like to ask the committee if anybody feels like making a motion at this time.
I so move that we support the street co-naming. This is Ethel Tyus. Thank you, Chairman.
Ms. Tyus has made a motion to support the application to co-name the street for Kevin Alvis. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
That was Ms. Young.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Young, seconding the motion. Are there any questions on the motion?
Can you just briefly repeat the timing of his demise and the full name of the intended honoree?
Ms. Fernandez, perhaps you could
Hello. So I'm the former fiance of Kevin. I would like to revisit some of the things I said before. Kevin devoted his personal time to promote the welfare of others in the community. He showed small acts of kindness. Kevin stepped out to do a fatherly figure.
It's hard.
Yes, I'm okay. Mr. Witherwax, could you fill in the details, please?
Certainly. I didn't mean to put Ms. Fernandez on the spot, and I apologize for that. I believe the shooting occurred in April, and it's Prospect and Nostrand that we're looking to. Sorry, New York. I keep getting that wrong. Prospect in New York that we're looking to co-name.
Prospect Place in New York Avenue. Yes.
Yes, Prospect Place and New York Avenue. Does that answer you, Ms. Tyus?
Thank you, Mr. Witherwax. And the deceased full name, please?
Kevin Alves.
His name
Thank
was
you.
Wayne Alves.
Thank you very much.
Right. Any other questions on the motion? Seeing none, I'd like to call the roll. Desmond Atkins.
Yes.
Thank you. Julia Boyd. Michael Francoeur.
Yes.
Thank you. Alan Gerber. Karen Gray.
Yes.
Thank you. Saskia Hagans. Jeannie Harris Blenman. Alan Jakubczyk.
Yes.
Thank you. Jennifer Jordan.
Yes.
Thank you. Zerzima Jordan.
Yes.
Thank you. Regina Kinsey. Peter Crashes.
Yes.
Thank you. Francis Langley.
Yes.
Thank you. William Meehan.
Aye.
Thank you. Fiora Ortiz Joyner.
Yes.
Thank you. Pebbles Russell. Celeste Stern. Nicole Tetreault. Mark Thurton.
Abstain.
Thank you. Ethel Tyus. Ms. Tyus, I'll
Yes.
come back. Thank you.
Yes. Okay.
Robert Witherwax, yes. Deborah Young.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes 13 in favor, 1 abstention, no opposition. The motion will be taken to the full board for consideration at its November meeting. Congratulations and thank you everyone who turned out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Next.
you, Mr. Witherwax. This is our version of making history.
Well, if we don't engrave history on the streets and sidewalks of our city, we are condemned to forget it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's no one else that everybody has access to.
Thank you.
I'll add the parks to that. Next item on the agenda. This committee will be breaking into 4 subcommittees for our November meeting. The subcommittees are environment, sanitation, streets, and transit. And I've gotten a few responses from people as to which committee they would like to serve on, which subcommittee they'd like to serve on. I'm now going to go around the room and put everybody who's here on the spot, and I want you to tell me what committee you want to serve on. You can serve on more than one, but don't overcommit yourself. So your choices are environment, sanitation, streets, and transit. Mr. Atkins.
Thank you. My question is, which committee handles vermin?
Whichever committee you sit on will handle vermin, I have no doubt. And you can put that under the I would call that an environmental issue. I think that's where we've slotted it. So let's say environmental.
So place me on streets and environmental.
Thank you, sir. Michael Francoeur. We'll come back. Karen Gray.
Streets and transit.
Thank you. Jeannie Harris Blenman. Ellen Jakubczyk.
Let's say transit and sanitation, please.
Thank you. Jennifer Jordan.
Sanitation and transit. No, street and sanitation.
Sorry, say that again.
Street and sanitation.
Streets and sanitation. Great. Zurzima Jordan.
The same.
Thank you. Peter Crashes, you said streets. Do you want to add one or are you good with streets?
I'm good with streets. Thank you.
Great. Francis Langley.
Yes, I had to step away. Repeat, please.
No problem, Ms. Langley. What subcommittee do you want to serve on? Environment, sanitation, streets, or transit?
Streets.
Thank you. Mr. Meehan?
Just transit for now. I might want to join streets later.
Great. Fiora Ortiz Joyner?
I was on the rules of the road the last time. What
Going to be the streets this time.
Okay, so what's the difference between transportation?
Transportation is going to focus more on questions of transit service, buses, subways, specifically on that.
Okay, I'll take streets. Thank you.
Great. Let's see who else is here. Mark Thurton.
I was on. Well, I'm sorry, Rob. What committee I was on again?
You last year? I don't remember.
I think I'm going to go with the same one that what committee you're going on to now?
Street. We were on rules of the road together,
Yeah.
so streets is the comparable committee.
Okay, yes.
I'll come back. I'm
Thank
gonna
you,
kind of,
Mr. Witherwax. This is Ethel Tyus responding to my subcommittee choices, streets and sanitation. We need to speak to our mayor about the changes he's proposing in April for cans on the lids on the cans going to the curb. And we need to look at that history and work with our sanitation union workers to make sure everybody's happy, but the rats are starved. Thank you.
I would love, let me just seed the clouds here a little bit. I would love this subcommittee to have a statement ready to go by well in advance of that moment on our opinion of the proposed changes, right? That's the urban function we need to be fulfilling. What do we think about these changes? And make sure that Councilmember Osei knows what we think about them, and Councilmember Hudson and Councilmember Mealy know, right? Ms. Young.
Thank you.
I think I'm gonna go with streets.
Great. I'm going to float among all committees. This is great. And I've got some other people who have given me, who aren't here tonight, who've given me their preferences. So I will send out a proposed, this time block in November, which is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, may be more or less convenient for everyone to meet in. But the point is that when we reconvene and the same thing in December, the point is that when we reconvene in November, in January, we want to be able to make each committee to make some kind of a report and say, look, we've met, we've thought about what was on the spreadsheet for the goals, and here's what we think we can accomplish in the next couple months. We can be modest, we can be bold, but we have to have something that we want to deliver. Also this year, we want to have a list. And we started this. This is what the great piece of fruit that came out of the Rules of the Road Committee, those spreadsheets, those interactive spreadsheets that we put together. I want a list of sanitation, environmental, street and transit hotspots. Where do we think our city agencies, our city dollars, our city elected officials need to focus their attention going forward? There's some obvious candidates. As when we get to new business, we've had some fatalities at the exact same spot over this intersection, right? That seems to me a hot spot that we may want to ask our elected officials and appointed officials and government servants to focus their attentions on. If we don't point them at these things, no one's going to point them at these things. So then I want to have a report, like I said, where these subcommittees will explain to representatives from the elected officials. I think it's very important that they show up and listen to us in the January and February meetings to hear what we have to say about the state of our district. So we will be inviting the council members back, and we will inviting DOT, DOS, DEP, and New York City Transit to come and listen to our committee report. So it's very vital that we do the work in the next couple of months. So I thank you all. I will send out group lists so that we're all together and know who's on what committee. And as Peter points out in the chat, the spreadsheets are adaptable to each of the different subcommittees. It's a nice fungible tool, and we want to use it to record and track our work as we go forward. All right. Any other questions on the subcommittees?
My hand is raised.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Atkins. Go right ahead.
So this was my question. Is State Councilman still in the meeting?
I believe he has left.
That's what I didn't want, because
I'm a representative from the office if there's a question.
who's that?
Excellent. Thank you.
My name is May. I'm Councilmember OC staffer.
May Vutra, can you say your name?
May Vutra Pongvatana, Director of Policy and Budget for Councilmember OC.
Thank you, ma'am. In the past, we had some issues with people who were profligate scofflaws, and what had happened was that they had allowed illegal dumping to take place on their properties. And when we dug down, we found out that there was city regulations said that they can only be ticketed once a month. And so these particular people basically took that as the cost of doing business. And so whatever area this was the case became a regular dumping ground. It is still a regular dumping ground. There is also a tremendous lack of supervisors to go around and patrol the streets and to make sure that businesses are complying with carting regulations and the handling of their waste. And trash rolls up and down certain streets. And then every once in a while, you get a zealous person who will come and ticket the homeowner. And I don't know if you've heard me speak, but basically, I've been watching the city um, spend its time punishing small property owners relentlessly. And we would like to get some of those laws changed. And we would like to know the best way to present that. We know that Councilman Osei and Hudson and Nurse work together, and there are some others who have formed a block. And my understanding is that certain problems that are occurring in my community are happening everywhere. Ms. Tyus made excellent points about things that I've been talking about, and I look forward to getting those things done.
That's
But
exactly, that's an excellent point. That's exactly what I hope to come out of the environmental subcommittee, which you and I are going to sit on, and the sanitation work as well.
and I want to say, Rob, that I'm very happy that you have flagged it so that the committees can meet or should meet at the same time that the meetings would have taken place. Because you know that I was unhappy with the shutting down of the meetings during the holiday time. There's a holiday, but it's not a holiday if I go outside and I'm walking through filth and muck and the traffic is all backed up. And I made a point at the general meeting that safety is directly impacted by traffic. And I pointed out examples in the last months of this meeting and in the general meeting. And there needs to be more crosstalk among certain committees about those particular faults within the community. My understanding is that Superintendent Mendez is no longer at BK8.
That's correct.
There's a new person there, and I spoke to a Pro B supervisor today on my block who was he was approachable, but he was very unsure of himself. But there are people being put on the street. But I've had to write letters to 311 about sanitation workers who basically treat you like trash and take pleasure in doing it and doing things to affect you in a negative way. So all those issues need to be brought because I'm pretty sure it doesn't just happen to me.
Nope, no, it does not. And that's the point of what I hope to come out of the initial subcommittee meetings is exactly this: a whiteboard with a list of areas that are germane to the subcommittee where we think that by speaking with our elected officials and speaking with the city government agencies, we can affect that kind of granular change that hits home to our constituents.
Okay, I see other people's hands. I see other
and
people's
then
hands up.
Matthias.
But I just like to say I would like if Miss Vutrapong Getna could tell us the best way to shape requests so that they're easily made into legislation. That would be very helpful.
Well,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Desmond, thank you for flagging this issue for us in our office. Sanitation's a top priority for the council member, and he's actually working to pass a rat mitigation package this week in the council. We definitely want to look into, ensuring that businesses are not illegally dumping. In the long term, this is legislation that I can personally look at, and I'm gonna drop my email in the chat. I'd love to hear a little bit more details of what's going on. In the short term, we're happy to get DSNY out to this particular spot that you're mentioning. Do you know the intersection or the street where this spot is happening? You said there's like a regular dumping ground
Ma'am,
going on?
ma'am, this has been going on for more than a decade. It's the intersection of Kingston Avenue and Bergen Street. There's one person who owns two properties. He basically forced city agencies to make one corner that would be the northeast corner spotless, and he made the southwest corner a place where he owns the property but has stopped developing it. The building is undergoing demolition by neglect. Ethel and I have been in touch with landmarks and every other agency, but also the Business Integrity Commission, because at one point they were dumping trash there, and the only way we could get them to stop was to notify the Business Integrity Commission. We have been all over this, and basically, there appears to be some form of corruptibility stopping our actions, because no matter what we say and do, how right we are, things never get to a fun. We never get decency. We never get decency. And that's not to say that there aren't other places within the district that are fighting similar problems. But this one place, I keep bringing up this example. If you've ever seen the movie Chinatown, well, this corner is Chinatown. Anything can happen there.
Well, Mr. Desmond, what we can do, as I mentioned, I know this is going on for decades, but this is a new administration and we'll do what we can to solve this problem. In the short term, we'll have our team look at Bergen and Kingston. We'll see if we can get DSNY out there or something to stop this in the short term. In the long term, I'm happy to look at legislation to, better enforce some type of rule so that we prevent this dumping from happening. So I just need to do a little bit more research, but we can absolutely try to work on some legislation for this.
Greatly appreciate.
I think we will have a punch list for your office, Ms. Vutrapong Vatana, hopefully in a couple of months about our priorities. And this, the dumping fine regulations are certainly among them. It's a chronic problem, as Mr. Atkins points out, not just at this particular intersection, but there are other chronic problem spots in the district, and they're not all in your council member's district, but we love to work on the specifics and the general. So thank you for posting your email in the chat. Ms. Tyus,
Absolutely.
questions from you? All right, moving on. Is there any old business we wanted to talk about? New business? I know we, Mr. Thurton, go right ahead.
Once we finish the new business, I just, some topics came up that I just wanted to mention once everything else is over.
Mr. Crashes, something on old business?
A new business.
New business. All right. So new business, let's move on to new business. As I alluded to earlier, we've had two separate fatal accidents on the Schenectady Avenue, Lincoln Place, and Eastern Parkway over the weekend. I think one was on Friday and one was on Sunday. One involved a scooter, one involved a pedestrian, and a driver running a red light. I've heard, though I haven't confirmed, that driver actually got arrested, which is, for those of you who follow these things, a rarity in traffic crime, that somebody gets arrested for being a malefactor. All of which goes to say is that our project that we have been advocating for years about the crosswalks that are missing and should be installed on the Eastern Parkway avenues, we're going to go back to DOT and say, look, do your work, get it done. This is costing lives. This is costing people's livelihoods. So this is a problem that is pressing to our community. So please do what you said you're going to do years ago. I had another item of new business, but I didn't write it down. So I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Thurton and then Mr. Crashes.
Mr. Crashes can go.
Thank you. This is just, we have on our, I live on Dean between Vanderbilt and Carlton, and we have, in the last couple of weeks, National Grid has started to put a gas main, a major gas line, a line in the sidewalks on the south side of the street, which seems pretty unusual. We didn't receive any notice, and as far as I know. And so I have a couple of questions I was wondering if the community board could help us follow up on. One is, why is it going in the sidewalk? What are the notice obligations for National Grid work for something of this nature, which is really disruptive? I mean, they're literally cutting through the sidewalk, taking a trench along trees and through driveways for businesses. It would seem like there should be some kind of notice obligation. And when is the work going to be completed?
I don't have, obviously, we don't have the answers tonight, but we will make sure we get them as quickly as possible. I'll relay that to the board office tomorrow morning.
Right, and it's
I'm just, hi, this is Karen. Quickly, sorry, I didn't raise my hand. But there is a sign that they put up on the corner of Carlton and Prospect where it says major work by Brooklyn Gas occurring in the area. They give a begin date and end date. I would say check that sign and see if it involves your street as well.
what I was just going to say is that I think that it may be linked to, because what's happening on Park Place is water and sewer main replacement, and they're going to be doing the same on Dean Street, which we had a presentation about a while back. So that's actually another question for the community boards, because there hasn't been any sign of that work. There were still some outstanding questions from DEP about it. One was why the work is occurring after the construction they're just adding another 800 units of housing on the same block. Why is the water and sewer main replacement occurring after the buildings will be opened? Yeah, and actually what the time frame of that is now, since it seems to have disappeared. So for the moment, I'm sure it hasn't disappeared altogether.
Oh no, they'll be back. Yeah, there's a lot of water sewer going on, but I can only imagine that the gas is just a relocation and prep for that. But yeah, I don't know what their notice obligations are. I don't know what National Grid's obligations are. They're not quite the same because they're not, they're not the city, but I don't know what they are. We'll find out. Julie will be able to track.
So did they displace the gas mains onto the sidewalks on Park Place as when they're replacing the water and sewer mains?
Not my block. I don't recall that it happened on that block, but it doesn't sound wrong, but it doesn't sound familiar either.
Because it would, you would notice it because it's a trench that gets runs about 5 feet in front of everybody's homes all the way from
years and years ago they did it. So maybe they did it long enough ago that we've all forgotten. And like I said, it's not my block, but I walked down that block enough that I'm semi-familiar with it.
They've kind of been digging a lot on Park Place. There's a lot of digging on Park Place. Along between, what can I say, coming from Vanderbilt all the way down Carlton, going to Flatbush, there are lots of holes still opened on the street from the Brooklyn Gas.
They're right now they've got a trench on Park Place between Vanderbilt and Underhill. They've ostensibly finished between Carlton and Vanderbilt, but they'll probably dig it up again just for fun.
Yeah, their holes still need to be covered, that they still have open. So who knows?
Yeah. Any other new business that this committee can get some answers for?
I have my hand raised, but Mark is still ready to speak.
You do your question, Desmond, and I'm after you.
Okay, well, one is a question and one is a statement. Has anybody called in the pothole at 373 Sterling Place? That is about 6 inches deep and about 18 inches by 14 inches wide. That's a question.
That address again, 373
Sterling. I called it
near
in
the corner of Underhill.
That's about 80 yards before the corner.
Yeah, I know for a fact the Block Association has flagged that one, but I don't know that they've gotten any satisfaction. And there's also a recurrent sinkhole in the intersection of Underhill and Sterling.
Well, it almost wrecked the Prime truck in front of me today and then my car. That's the first thing. The second thing is the National Grid digging. Every private house has a turn-off valve in the sidewalk. And those, if they take the time to code them, they're yellow. And you may see somebody, if they're in misfortune, they'll come by and you'll have to be outside when they do it. And they will pry that lid up and they will go in there and they will turn their gas off from the street. I guess what you're seeing is them upgrading the infrastructure. That's what I would imagine.
Yeah, the trench is vaguely familiar with the relocation project. So we'll see. We'll get it answered. Mark?
Yeah, thank you. This um, pedestrian getting killed on Eastern Parkway. This is not the first time this happened. It happened already this year. There was another incident when a police car killed someone at that same location. We've had that's over in sector Charlie David with the 77 precinct. We also had another killing of a motorcyclist getting killed on Rogers. These are things that's been going on for quite a while. But people's been addressing these things to me from public safety. It's not just, it's been done over a while. They're concerned that outside of the Prospect Heights area, the community is not being taken care of. And they've addressed that to me, several people. And at times they're even discouraged to even come into our EST meeting because they don't feel that their community is being addressed. And as I mentioned, this is not the first time, and from several people. But from EST, I think we need to do better to make sure that everyone feels comfortable and let everyone knows that we are serving everyone in our community because they do feel neglected and their voices are not heard, and people are being killed and people are putting themselves in danger unnecessarily, especially over in the eastern section. We had Utica Avenue that was brought up in 2016 that DOT came down and was trying to do evaluation to make that area safe. It went on deaf ears. That was brought up to our committee several times. We have this section over on Eastern Parkway, all the way down on the east side. DOT really told us that those people over there's lives doesn't matter, and they're more concerned about everything else than the safety of those people. We had a meeting with them 2 years ago, and again, Chiose had another meeting at Weeksville, and DOT was at the meeting and gave us some stuff that's saying, yeah, we're gonna take care of it. They came and then they put in they was talking about putting a bike lane next to the park. They put the bike lane and still didn't address the safety for the residents. We need to make sure that everyone in our community is covered, because I don't want anyone to say that I'm Mark. I'm not going down on that meeting no more because they are not taking care of my section. They're really concerned about the western section of the community board, and community board 8 needs to address everyone. We have 3 sections in here: Weeksville, Crown Heights, and Prospect Heights. And I really feel bad when I can't say anything about it. And we definitely have to be an advocate for everyone and push it hard. And we need to have DOT at the table because we've had DOT come 6 or 7 times to address concerns of safety with Vision Zero and no fatality in Prospect Heights. We need for them to come out to our meeting and address the concerns of all the other sections that we've been crying about for years. And we need to push for that as hard as we push for anything else in the western section of Community Board 8. I think that's about it, but that was the main concern, and I really don't like to lose members from any committee because they feel that they're not being represented, but we have to represent everyone.
I couldn't agree more. I think you make an excellent point, and I wish DOT would stop coming with the open streets proposals and modifications to open streets proposals. I wish they would come and talk more about what they did for Buffalo Avenue. I wish they would come back and tell us, look at the wonderful job we did finishing Eastern Parkway. I wish they would come back with the Utica Avenue proposal that they brought us in 2016 that went nowhere. Now, I will say this. If those people want to come back to this committee and form a core group to work on those projects specifically, much like there is a core group of people in Prospect Heights who work on open streets issues, they would find a hospitable environment in this committee. This committee serves the whole board.
My thought about it is that these issues have been brought up for years. I mean, as a committee, we don't need that. My thought is, as a committee, if they come out for open streets, why they cannot come out about keeping people's lives safe? I have a major problem with that. If they put it in writing that they are not going to come out to represent everyone, then I want to see it in writing. If they're telling us verbally they're not, it's unacceptable. They need to put it in writing that they're not going to come out and speak about Vision Zero for everyone.
No, I think you misunderstood me. I think you misunderstood me. It's not DOT saying that. I'm saying that if the community members want to come to this committee and form a core group like was formed in Prospect Heights to advocate to DOT for specific changes, this committee would support them. The changes, the open streets environments in Prospect Heights are the fruit of the labor of PHNDC. If there was a comparable organization in Crown Heights and Weeksville that wanted to do street safety changes and advocate for them on the ground, on Nostrand Avenue, on Utica Avenue, on Schenectady Avenue, on Kingston Avenue, we'd be right there behind them. We'd be waving the flags and getting the attention and teaching them the ropes and the know-how that we've figured out. That's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see more involvement from people at that end of the district in this committee, not just coming here and saying, why don't we get attention, but coming here with concrete proposals for changes like speed bumps, like daylighting intersections.
The problem that I have with that is that the proposal is out there. They did put the proposal out there for Eastern Parkway. They just told those people that you're on the back burner, and that's a problem. And as a committee, we need to be the voice for those people.
Yeah. I'm not going to defend DOT on that. I think it's sad and tragic, but
that's not what I'm saying.
Between a capital project and an operating budget project, right? The open streets changes they've done in Prospect Heights are cheap and dirty, right? They just throw some paint down and put the barricades on. They need to do, for Eastern Parkway project, it's moving dirt, it's moving concrete, it's installing infrastructure. It's a different order of magnitude. That doesn't excuse anything. I really wish it was done 2 years ago too. But I will go back to something you mentioned, which is the Utica Avenue proposal. They came to us, I want to say it was in 2016, with some proposals for
6 years ago.
Yeah, 6 years ago. I think it was certainly before the pandemic, and I think just after Fred. Well, I think Fred was still chair of this committee, and a lot of people in this committee did not like those proposals. Now this committee has changed. It's time to look at those proposals again. But DOT did not get a friendly reception with some street safety proposals for Utica and St. John's that they brought to this committee. This committee told them that this was not good enough, go back. So, the times have changed. People's attitudes have changed. It's time to look at those again. I'll circulate them among the committee members and see if we want to go to DOT and say, look, we've got a problem on Utica and Schenectady. It's about public safety and pedestrian safety. Here are some great ideas that you had, DOT, 6 years ago. Can we get these on the boards? And these were changes that were just, again, paint, quick, dirty, cheap. Mr. Meehan points out it's really sad how little capacity DOT has to fix crosswalks right now. It's true. Again, I'm no apologist for the agency, but capital projects are constrained right now. So the more we can do to mimic what was done on places like Underhill and Vanderbilt on the eastern avenues, I'd be all on board for that. But somebody needs to come up and say, hey, let's do that on Nostrand. Let's do that on Kingston.
This is not about changing anything. This is about basic Vision Zero.
It's not just a concept, Mark. It needs a street level application of the concept. Otherwise, it's just language, right? It needs some changes like a bike lane, like taking away a lane of travel, like daylighting an intersection, like raising a crosswalk. And we're the ones who need to tell DOT, do that here. Now, I don't know those streets as well as you and Desmond do, and I would be constrained to say anything more than looking at a map or, riding my bike around and looking at things to say, I think this would work here. I want to hear from the people who live on those streets and use those streets every day. What changes would make them feel safer? We can take
Okay.
that to DOT. They'll listen. They'll want communities to do that.
So,
But we need
Mark, may I
to
speak
find
now?
that sort of granular project that we can bring to them from the people who know what that would be.
I'm sorry, I have to interject.
Well, no,
Mrs.
I
Ethel
asked
Tyus.
Ethel, I had my hand up and I asked Mark's forbearance to allow me to speak.
Yes,
I'm
Mr.
sorry,
Atkins, then Ms.
Desmond.
Tyus.
I'm sorry, Desmond. I'm on my phone for the first time. I've never used my phone.
Oh,
Couldn't figure out
apology
how to.
accepted. Let's continue.
Okay.
So
I want to ask us to offer an olive leaf to our city agencies and ask them to make sure that the personnel losses that they've experienced for resignation or death or whatever from COVID, they backfill on that. And one example that I would give, and only one, is a recent request to sanitation for an appointment for a special removal. You had to submit a certificate of occupancy to get Department of Sanitation to respond. And the response from sanitation was that the certificate of occupancy was from 1964. So the new people that have come in to replace the folks that died or left or whatever, they don't have the training and the experience to do the things that we need to
I'm
have
in a
done.
meeting.
That excuses nothing. I'm extending no olive branches. You're in city government. Do your job.
Okay,
Sorry
I
to be
just wanted to bring
dyspeptic on the
that up.
question.
I just wanted to bring that up to point out to them that they need to train people to do their jobs.
I'm with you on that, but again, our expectations should not be diminished just because of certain personnel things, right? These are issues of life and death, and we should have no qualms about asking for what we deserve as a community, right? Mr. Atkins.
Wow, thank you. So this is the point. You keep making the point very strong that there needs to be one or two organizations on the eastern end of the district to take our concerns to the city agencies. And once again, it comes down to our advocates are our city council persons. When I was trying to get the two sinkholes, one of which has opened up again, by the Brooklyn Children's Museum and on the corner of Kingston and Bergen, sealed or filled and sealed, I was told by another person in Mr. Alsay's office, it's like basically like, you're really being a bug. We already submitted this. There's nothing else that you can expect us to do. The city is not responsive. The level of bureaucracy stops them or allows them to stop meeting people's needs. And there doesn't appear to be, and somewhere behind the scene, there are people who have money who are able to get things done. I keep seeing things like bus stops being extended, bus stops being moved in more than one place within CB9 bordering CB8. I keep seeing these things occurring, and it's counterintuitive. Why would you take a bus stop and move it to the other end of the block away from the train station when people exiting the train station want to be able to get immediately to the bus stop? But someone is able to affect those kind of changes and no one can say anything. And I'm glad that I don't know if Miss Maeve Vutra Pangatana is still in the meeting, but these are the kind of things that are occurring. And I'll be more than happy to work with people to put together a group or work within an existing group to get these things submitted, because this is basically the same thing. And everyone else can see it in one way or another, that certain things get done and other things never do. Certain people's needs are met and other people are told, go away, don't bother me. And Mark stepped out and complained. This was my original point. I'm sorry I wasn't in the forefront, but now I'm speaking. I can just be real stinky about this, because this is what's been occurring for the longest time. And as I made the point when I had that problem years ago, before being inundated with vermin, I went through just about every city agency, everyone basically told me, it's like, well, what do you expect me to do? I've done what I'm supposed to do. Now we've got a city now that's overrun with rats. And the only thing that's really, I want to say this in front of everybody, the only way the rat problem is going to change is if there is a health vector that's identified because of the rats. Because right now it's just an ugly problem. But if people were to start getting, just like the bubonic plague, start getting sick because of lice or whatever being shed by rats, and people started dying because of that, then there would be a huge uproar. And then maybe some of the things that were in place 40 years ago that worked for decades would be reinstituted as they were taken out because it was no longer seen as being comfortable. Ethel alluded to those things. We have a feeding problem, and people are a lot nastier. They just discard everything anywhere, but people don't cover their trash, and the rats know it. And then you place it on the curb in a plastic bag. That's like saying, oh, here's your bib. And everybody wants to know why the rats are everywhere. People are telling me they're in the train station and the rats are walking up and down the platform. And it's like, what are you doing here? That's the rat talking to the humans. Get out of my way. The city has caused this problem over 40 years' time. It didn't happen overnight. And so somebody has to really make hard decisions about going back to the things that worked for decades in the past, instead of looking at productivity increases for sanitation workers and the broad gendering of the workforce, because or the health concerns of the workers and the things that were changed because of that. And over this 40 years, the rat problem, and now with the development, has exploded.
Mr. Atkins, this is Ethel Tias. I'd like to remind us all that back in the day, the sanitation unions, and they're our key for the solution, complained about the heavy weight of the metal cans with the metal tops. And then we switched to plastic cans with plastic tops, and they were found in the street, blown by the wind, run over by cars and buses.
Absolutely.
So we will need the sanitation workers union to work with us on this.
Right. And that's what I've been alluding to, the fact that all those things that were taken away in the mid 80s, and then the productivity increases in the mid 90s, where they went from 3 workers on a truck, to 2, and you were responsible to place your trash on the curb, thus creating an open venue for vermin to feed.
Yeah, we need to figure out how to meet all of these needs in one neat package.
And we
The
need,
summary point is that this district's voice is equally valid as any other district's. The needs of our citizens are just as valid as the needs of any other districts, whether we're talking about protection from rats or protection from speeding cars or whatever we can do. And the agenda of this committee is to find those problem areas, bring the attention of the elected officials to those problems, and maybe even propose some solutions. We don't have to have all the answers. We're not the experts, but we have to be able to point to the problem and say, fix this, right? And that's what we need. We need people to come to us and say, this committee can do it, but I want to hear it from the ground up. Here's the problem. Fix this. And that is what we can help people with. We can help people bringing the attention and the solutions to bear, right? I agree with Mr. Atkins wholeheartedly and everything he's just said about trash. I'm the only person on my block who puts out a can routinely with garbage. Everybody else puts bags. And guess what? It's a smorgasbord.
May I ask you, Rob, when you put your can out, how is it treated?
Often, the sanitation workers will take a bag or two of the, say, 3 that are in the can, and I will inevitably find several other items of personal refuse dumped in the can, which maybe means the sanitation workers don't take the can at all because somebody's had the temerity to drop a recyclable soda can into the can.
What about the lid?
Oh, I don't bother with a lid.
But you should.
Okay.
You
Okay,
know,
that's the fall off. But
the
if we
lid ends up everywhere else, and guess what? The rats have already chewed a hole in the can. So anyway,
It's a steel can, right?
I don't want to make this about my personal
No, no,
problems.
no.
It's 8 o'clock,
It's
and,
not, Rob. It's not about you because you're just an example of everything that's happening everywhere. Because I was going to ask you, when you come out and you look for your can, is it in front of your house where you put it, or is it 1 to 2 houses down the street from you?
Yep.
Well, that I don't care so much about, as long as the garbage gets picked up. I'd like to make it convenient for the gentlemen and ladies who do the work, but I'll walk a house or two.
There's no reason. Well, sometimes they don't just take it that far. Sometimes they throw your can down on the ground and they leave it blocking the pathway for people to get up and down the street. These are microaggressions that the workers do to property owners when they're upset because you place your trash out in a receptacle. They don't want you to put your trash in an individual bag in the can. It's too hard to pick up. But then you put your trash in the can in singular bags as you collected it in your house. Then they don't empty the can. Or they say, or if you go outside, they'll tell you, I can give you a ticket because this is in your can and it's recycling. After your
Mr.
can
Atkins,
has stood,
you and I and whoever else wants to join us is going to have a heck of a good sanitation committee and environmental committee meeting come November. So I'm going to ask that we table the rest of this for that.
Okay.
And are there any other items of new business?
No, I just want to say everything that Desmond Atkins has mentioned, we need to work with the sanitation union representative, have them come so we can come to a joint solutions on this because your
That is the goal. As I alluded before, come January and February, we are going to make sure that those representatives attend this meeting. And we are going to speak to them and we are going to say, here are the findings of the sanitation subcommittee. We want X, Y, Z, W, V, U, T addressed. That is the point of what this committee is going to do over the next couple of months.
I recommend that the question be, how can we solve this problem so that the people who do the work input into the solution and we work with them to come to a solution? Because if they're just throwing the cans anywhere and blowing in the street, cars run over them, people can't afford to keep replacing their cans, metal, plastic, vinyl, whatever. So these are some of the solutions that
Because
we
they throw
need.
the garbage and throw it in the ring.
Oh, they chew the can.
Like when it's going to me, I'm right there, knock 2 doors down.
Yes.
All right.
On the top of the sidewalk.
Any other items of new business? It's 8 o'clock. I know that Mr. Cream has stuck around kindly. Do we have any more questions or comments to make about the presentation that started off the meeting?
Only, this is Ethel Tias again, only that MTA parking lot be focused on housing. Because there's plenty of room there for low and very low income housing. And I think that should be the target for the reuse of that lot. And I did give that proposal to the head of the MTA 2 years ago when I was chair of the board. Thank you.
Ms. Tice, I'd love to see that proposal, and if I may, I'm just running low on time here, so if I may just respond to a few of the points earlier. And that being one of them. But Mr. Atkins, I mean, so I think it's a nice segue into what you were just saying, Ms. Tyus, is real quick, just to answer your question on our work in South Africa. Every single resident in the homes you saw was the original resident of the Shanty Village. And we've been working on that project for 5+ years. And I just want to highlight this fact because we're quite proud of it. It's how I spent most of the day.
Miss Jordan, we can hear you.
But we work very hard and we are in the final stages of acquiring title of all 75 homes that we've built to hand over to all 350 residents of that community, enabling first-time home ownership that they were taken away of nearly 40 years ago. And we are currently in the process of enumerating a new site and hopefully creating another 200 first-time homeowners in Cape Town. And to your point, Ms. Tyus, I think a lot of what we're hopeful to do with the ideas behind the project is look at ways in which we can do truly public and inclusive development within this corridor, within this footprint, as opposed to and introducing a public post-industrial adaptive reuse element that can help control the narrative of development, as opposed to the, quite frankly, I find it quite disgusting luxury development that is taking away all history and essence of, I mean, we can just say for now, Fulton and Atlantic is where it's most extreme, coming down from Barclays. So, and I guess just to answer a couple of the questions on red fields and gondola speeds and wait times, I think, a lot of that, being social architects, all our projects, quite frankly, are humanitarian in their root, so which means we aren't flush with cash, but those are exactly the kinds of questions that we want to answer. And I think part of, our goal here in engaging with you guys is to understand whether or not there would be interest in these kinds of ideas of increased, layering of mobility, conversion of vacant land, city land, because we've done this in a number of different cities and political environments. If this is something that you guys are interested in exploring, we would then be ideally going out and figuring out how we can get funding publicly to engage in formal studies of this corridor. So I guess those would just be my closing thoughts. And if any quick response or anything like that before I have to sign off.
No, thank you, Mr. Cream. Thank you for your time. Thank you for, again, the provocative ideas that you brought before us. So we've seen, it takes me back to 10, 15 years ago when we worked on Grand Army Plaza and had an ideas competition for that. And there were some really out of the box crazy things. And not saying yours are as out of the box or crazy as, say, a roller coaster in Grand Army Plaza, but it got the community thinking, and it affected some change in some meaningful ways, and it bore some good fruit with that. So I wish you good luck, and you're always welcome to come back to present to us and pick our brains even. So thank you for your time.
Great, thank you all.
Any other items of new or old business before we adjourn for the evening? Hearing none, I thank everyone for their time, and I will be sending out in the next week or so the assignments for the subcommittees once I finalize them with people who didn't attend tonight, and a time and place for the first meeting. So thank you all very much for a good meeting, and we'll talk to you soon. See you in November at the full board, I hope.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night all.
Good day.